My husband Terrell's laugh echoed through the lawyer's office like a slap across my face. Not a chuckle, not a snicker. A full-bellied, head-thrown-back laugh that made the young paralegal in the corner flinch and the lawyer's jaw tighten. "The family home?" Terrell wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. "Oh, this is rich. This is absolutely rich." I sat frozen in the leather chair, my mother's funeral program still clutched in my trembling hands. Mama had been in the ground for exactly 4 days. 4 days, and here was my husband of 32 years, laughing at her final wishes like it was all some cosmic joke. Attorney Gerald Thornton cleared his throat, his dark fingers adjusting his reading glasses. "Mr. Whitfield, if you could please—" "No, let me guess," Terrell interrupted, leaning forward with that smug grin I'd been seeing more and more lately. "That beautiful Victorian on Oakwood Avenue that Willie was so proud of, the one with the wraparound porch and the stained glass windows?" He turned to me, his eyes glittering with something cruel. "Baby, hate to break it to you, but that house has been mortgaged to the rafters for the last 15 years. Your mama took out loan after loan trying to keep it up. I saw the paperwork myself when she asked me for advice last year." My stomach dropped. "What paperwork? Mama never—" "She was too embarrassed to tell you," Terrell said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy now. "Didn't want you to know she was drowning. That house is worth maybe $400,000, but she owes damn near $300 on it. And you know what condition it's in? Needs a new roof, new HVAC, foundation work. You're inheriting a money pit, sweetheart. We'll have to sell it just to break even." "We?" I whispered. "Well, yeah. You're my wife. What's yours is ours, right?" He reached over and patted my hand like I was a child. "Don't worry. I'll handle everything. We can probably get it sold within a month, pay off the mortgage, and maybe, walk away with $50,000 to split. Better than nothing." Something hot and sharp rose in my chest. I looked at Attorney Thornton, who was watching this entire exchange with an expression I couldn't quite read. His lips were pressed into a thin line. "Is that—" I had to clear my throat. "Is that all? Is that everything Mama left me?" Terrell laughed again, softer this time. "What did you expect, Yvonne? Your mother was living on Social Security and her church pension. Be grateful she left you anything at all." Attorney Thornton's chair creaked as he shifted his weight. "Actually," he said quietly, "there's more." The room went still. "More?" Terrell's grin faltered just slightly. "More what? More debt?" Mr. Thornton reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper, crisp and white and official-looking. "Mrs. Vivian Wilhelmina Cross added a codicil to her will. Last night, to be precise. It was properly witnessed, notarized, and filed with this office at 11:47 p.m. My heart stopped. Last night? But Mama had died on Thursday morning. Today was Monday. Last night would have been— "That's impossible," Terrell said flatly. "Willie died 4 days ago." "The codicil was added last night," Mr. Thornton repeated, his voice steady. "Not by Mrs. Cross herself, but by her daughter, Mrs. Yvonne Whitfield, acting as executor with full authority as granted in the original will, drafted 6 months ago." Terrell's head whipped toward me so fast I heard his neck crack. "What did you do?" Before we continue, if this story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next story. To understand how we got here, how I ended up in a lawyer's office with my husband looking at me like I'd betrayed him instead of the other way around, I need to take you back. Back to 3 months ago, when everything started to unravel. It was a Sunday morning in August, the kind of hot that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. I'd just gotten home from early service at New Hope Baptist, where Mama had been a member for 57 years. I was still in my cream dress and good shoes, humming "His Eye is on the Sparrow" as I unlocked our front door. Terrell wasn't home. Again, He'd been spending more and more Sundays at what he called business meetings, even though he'd been retired from the post office for 3 years now. I was heading to the kitchen to start Sunday dinner when I heard it. His voice, coming from his home office. The door was cracked open just slightly. "I'm telling you, Ray, it's perfect timing," Terrell was saying. His voice had that excited edge it got when he thought he was being clever. "The old lady can't have more than a few months left. 6 max, the way her health is going. And when she kicks it, Yvonne inherits everything." My hand froze on the doorframe. "Old lady? Mama?" "I know the house has a mortgage," Terrell continued, "but the property value is insane right now. We force a quick sale, pay off the debt, and pocket the difference. Yvonne won't fight me on it. She never fights me on anything. 32 years of marriage, man, and she still thinks I'm the same guy she married." Laughter from the phone's speaker. Then a man's voice I recognized as Ray Patterson, Terrell's golfing buddy. "What about Yvonne's cut? She gonna just hand it over?" "She doesn't need to know the real numbers," Terrell said smoothly. "I'll handle the sale. Tell her we barely broke even after closing costs and repairs. She'll believe me. She always does. Meanwhile, I'll set up that offshore account we talked about. By this time next year, I'll be living in Costa Rica with enough money to last the rest of my life. She can keep the house here, keep her little church friends, whatever. I'll send her divorce papers once I'm settled." The floor tilted under my feet. The walls seemed to close in. 32 years. 32 years of cooking his meals, ironing his shirts, believing every lie that rolled off his tongue like honey. "What about the life insurance?" Ray asked. "You still listed as beneficiary?" "Changed it last year when Yvonne wasn't paying attention," Terrell said. "Had her sign a bunch of papers when we refinanced. She didn't even read them. She never reads anything I put in front of her." He was right. I didn't. I'd trusted him. I backed away from the door on shaking legs, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Silent, furious tears that burned hot tracks down my face and ruined my makeup. All this time. All these years. And he'd been planning to leave me with nothing. But it was the way he talked about Mama that made something inside me go hard and cold. When she kicks it. Like Mama was nothing but an obstacle standing between him and money. Mama, who'd raised me alone after Daddy died when I was 12. Mama, who'd worked double shifts as a nurse for 30 years to make sure I could go to college. Mama, who'd welcomed Terrell into our family with open arms, despite her quiet reservations. "He's got smooth words, baby girl," Mama had told me the night before my wedding, her dark hands holding mine. "But watch his eyes. Eyes don't lie like mouths do." I should have listened. I spent that entire Sunday in a fog, going through the motions of making pot roast and mac and cheese and green beans while my mind raced. When Terrell came home that evening, whistling and cheerful, I almost couldn't look at him. "Dinner smells good, baby," he said, kissing my cheek like he hadn't just been plotting to abandon me. "You outdid yourself." I served him his plate, watched him eat, smiled when he complimented the food, and all the while, something new was growing inside me. Not just anger, not just hurt, something sharper, something that tasted like justice. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I looked at my husband's phone while he was in the shower. I know it was wrong, but you know what else was wrong? 32 years of lies. The messages between Terrell and Ray went back 18 months. Detailed plans about moving money, setting up accounts, even coordinating with a woman named Simone in Costa Rica who'd apparently been keeping a place warm for him. There were photos, too. Photos that made my stomach turn. But it was the messages about Mama that made me see red. "Checked in with the nurse at Willie's facility," Terrell had written 3 weeks ago. "She says the old bird is declining fast. Might not make it to Christmas. Perfect timing." Mama wasn't even in a facility. She lived in her own home on Oakwood Avenue, the house my grandparents had bought in 1952 when black families were finally allowed to purchase property in that neighborhood. She was slowing down, sure, 82 years old and struggling with arthritis and high blood pressure, but she was still Mama, still sharp as a tack, still singing in the choir every Sunday. And my husband was counting down the days until her death, like he was waiting for a package to arrive. I took screenshots of everything, backed them up to a cloud account Terrell didn't know about. Then I deleted my tracks and put his phone back exactly where I'd found it. That afternoon, I drove to Oakwood Avenue. Mama's house sat on a corner lot, a beautiful 3-story Victorian painted pale yellow with white trim. The wraparound porch was lined with her hanging ferns and flower baskets. The stained glass window in the parlor, original from 1895, caught the afternoon sun and threw rainbows across the hardwood floors. I found Mama in her kitchen, where I'd spent countless hours as a child learning to make her famous peach cobbler and listening to her stories about the old days. "Yvonne, baby!" She lit up when she saw me, her face creasing into 1,000 beautiful wrinkles. "I wasn't expecting you today. Come here and give your mama some sugar." I hugged her tight, breathing in her scent of Pond's cold cream and lavender sachets. And then I started crying. Not delicate tears this time. Big, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. "Baby, what's wrong?" Mama pulled back, her brown eyes searching my face with concern. "What happened? Is it Terrell? Did he hurt you?" I told her everything. Every word of that phone conversation. Every message on his phone. Every plan to steal from her death and abandon me like trash. Mama listened in silence, her jaw getting tighter and tighter. When I finished, she stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the garden Daddy had planted 40 years ago. "I never liked that man," she said quietly. "Not from the first day you brought him home. But you loved him, so I kept my mouth shut. Figured maybe I was wrong. Maybe he'd prove himself worthy of my daughter." She turned back to me and her eyes were blazing. "But I wasn't wrong, was I?" "No, Mama, you weren't." She nodded slowly. Then her expression shifted into something I'd only seen a few times in my life. The look she got when she was about to fight. The same look she'd had when she marched into my school and demanded they put me in advanced classes. The same look when she'd faced down a racist bank officer who tried to deny her a loan. "All right then," Mama said. "Let's talk about this house." Mama made us tea. Real tea. The kind she kept for serious conversations, not the instant stuff. We sat at her kitchen table, the same one where she'd helped me with homework, where we'd planned my wedding, where we'd cried together when Daddy died. "This house," Mama began, stirring honey into her cup, "has been in our family for 73 years. Your grandparents bought it for $8,000 in 1952. Do you know what they went through to get it?" I shook my head, even though I'd heard the story before. Mama needed to tell it. "The bank turned them down 3 times. Said they didn't have enough credit, even though Grandpa Joe had been working at the steel mill for 15 years and never missed a payment on anything. What they meant was they didn't want colored folks in this neighborhood." She took a sip of tea. "So Grandpa Joe went to Mr. Theodore Crane. Remember I told you about him? The white lawyer who believed in doing right? He went to bat for your grandparents, got them that loan, and when they moved in, half the neighborhood tried to run them out, burned a cross on the lawn. Broke windows, called the police every time we had family over." "But they stayed," I whispered. "They stayed. And eventually the neighborhood changed. More black families moved in. We built a community. This house has seen 3 generations of Christmases, baby showers, wedding receptions, funeral repasts. Your daddy proposed to me on that front porch. You took your first steps in the parlor. This house is our history. Terrell said it's mortgaged, that you owe $300,000, Mama finished. He's not wrong about that part. My heart sank. So it was true. But Mama was smiling. Actually smiling. "What he doesn't know," she continued, "is where that mortgage money went." Over the next hour, Mama laid it out for me. 5 years ago, she'd been approached by a developer who wanted to buy up properties on Oakwood Avenue. He'd offered her $700,000 cash for the house and land. Mama had refused. "But I'm not stupid," she said. "I knew he'd be back. New developers were circling the neighborhood like vultures. So I took out a mortgage, used the house as collateral for $300,000. Told everyone, including Terrell when he got nosy, that I needed it for repairs and medical bills." "Where did the money really go?" Mama's smile widened. "I gave it to my financial advisor, Portia Chen. You remember her from church? Used to be a vice president at Merrill Lynch before she retired? She invested every penny. And baby, that woman is a genius." I stared at my mother. "Invested it in what?" "Everything. Stocks, bonds, real estate investment trusts. Started with $300,000 5 years ago. As of last week, that portfolio is worth $5.2 million. The kitchen spun. $5 million? Mama, that's not possible. It's very possible when you have someone who knows what they're doing and you give them time to work. Portia made some smart moves early on, got me into tech stocks before they exploded, commercial real estate in growing markets. Plus, I kept adding to it. Every month, I'd put in whatever I could spare from my pension, sometimes just $200, sometimes more." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have told Terrell," Mama said gently. "Not on purpose. But he has a way of getting information out of you, doesn't he? A way of making you feel like you have to share everything with him?" She was right. God help me, she was right. "I was going to tell you eventually," Mama continued. "Had it all planned out. When I passed, you'd inherit the house and the portfolio. The portfolio would pay off the mortgage, handle all the upkeep, and still leave you with more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. You could finally leave Terrell if you wanted to. Have your own money, your own freedom." "But now he knows about the house," I said. "He's already planning to force me to sell it." "That's where Attorney Thornton comes in." The name sparked recognition. "Gerald Thornton? From New Hope?" "The very same. He's been my lawyer for 3 years now. Smart young man, graduated top of his class from Howard Law. When I explained the situation, he helped me set everything up airtight. The house is in a trust, has been for 2 years. Terrell doesn't know because I never told him, and you never checked the deed." My face burned with shame. I should have known. Should have paid attention. "Don't you feel bad," Mama said firmly. "You trusted your husband. That's what wives are supposed to do. It's not your fault he turned out to be a snake." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Now here's the important part. The will I wrote 6 months ago leaves you the house. Just the house. That's public record, and Terrell clearly found a way to see it. What he doesn't know is that there's a provision allowing you, as executor, to add codicils up to 30 days after my death." "Why would you do that?" "Insurance," Mama said. "In case things changed. In case I needed to make adjustments. In case—" She paused. "In case someone needed protecting." 3 months ago, that conversation had given me hope for the first time since I'd heard Terrell's phone call. Mama was already sick then. We just didn't know how sick. The arthritis pain had gotten worse. She was tired all the time, but her mind was sharp as ever. We'd spent hours planning with Attorney Thornton, every detail, every possibility. What if Terrell contested the will? What if he tried to claim spousal rights to the inheritance? What if he got a lawyer? "He can try," Gerald Thornton had said, his voice calm and confident. "But the law is clear. Assets held in trust before the marriage, or inherited by one spouse, remain separate property unless commingled. And since the house was your mother's before you married, and the investment portfolio was built with her money, not marital funds, Terrell has no legal claim." But he'll fight, I'd said. You don't know him, he doesn't give up. Then we'll be ready. Mama had passed on a Thursday morning in early November. Peaceful, in her sleep, in the bedroom she'd shared with Daddy for 33 years. I'd found her myself when I came by for our usual morning coffee. The grief had hit me like a train. But underneath it, there was something else. A sense of purpose. Because I knew what I had to do. The funeral was on Saturday. New Hope Baptist was packed. Mama had touched so many lives. Terrell played the grieving son-in-law perfectly, shaking hands, accepting condolences, his arm around my waist like he actually cared. So sorry for your loss, people kept saying. If only they knew. Sunday, Terrell started asking about the will. We should meet with the lawyer tomorrow, he said that evening, as I was putting away the last of the food people had brought. Get this sorted out quick. The sooner we can list the house, the better. Mama's not even cold yet, I said quietly. I know, baby. I know. He pulled me close, and I had to fight not to recoil from his touch. But we have to be practical. That house is a financial burden. The kindest thing we can do for your mother's memory is handle it responsibly. Kindest thing. Right. Monday morning, he was up early, already dressed in his good suit. Appointment's at 10, he said. I called Attorney Thornton's office first thing. Made sure we got in today. Of course he did. We drove separately. I told him I had errands to run after. Really, I just couldn't stand being trapped in a car with him. Gerald Thornton's office was in a renovated brownstone downtown, the kind of place that whispered success without shouting about it. His receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes named Aaliyah, offered us coffee while we waited. I'm so sorry about Mrs. Cross, she said to me. She was a remarkable woman. Thank you, I managed. When we were finally called in, Terrell practically bounded into the office, his salesman's smile at full wattage. Mr. Thornton, good to see you again. Thanks for fitting us in so quickly. Gerald shook his hand with professional courtesy, but I caught the flicker of distaste in his eyes. He'd heard the recordings I'd made of Terrell's phone calls, knew exactly what kind of man he was dealing with. The reading of the will had been straightforward at first. Small bequests to the church, to Mama's favorite charities. Then came the big one. To my beloved daughter, Yvonne Delilah Whitfield, I leave my home at 423 Oakwood Avenue, along with all its contents and furnishings, to do with as she sees fit. That's when Terrell had started laughing, and that's when Gerald had pulled out the codicil. Now, sitting in that leather chair with Terrell's face turning purple, I watched Gerald read the words that Mama and I had crafted together 3 months ago, that I had officially filed at 11:47 p.m. the night before. Codicil to the last will and testament of Vivian Wilhelmina Cross, Gerald read, his voice steady and clear. I, Yvonne Delilah Whitfield, acting as executor with full authority as granted in my mother's original will, do hereby amend said will to include the following provisions. Terrell's breathing had gone shallow. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Upon my mother's death, a trust established in her name 5 years prior, with current assets valued at $5,200,000, shall be activated for the sole purpose of maintaining the property at 423 Oakwood Avenue. Said trust shall immediately pay off all outstanding mortgages and liens on the property, with remaining funds designated for property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and upkeep in perpetuity. The silence in the room was deafening. Furthermore, Gerald continued, the property at 423 Oakwood Avenue is hereby confirmed to be held in irrevocable trust, with Yvonne Delilah Whitfield as sole beneficiary and trustee. The property cannot be sold, mortgaged, or otherwise encumbered without the unanimous consent of the trust board, consisting of attorney Gerald Thornton, financial advisor Portia Chen, and Reverend Calvin Oates of New Hope Baptist Church. Terrell's voice came out as a croak. $5 million? $5,200,000 as of last Friday's valuation, Gerald confirmed, give or take a few thousand depending on market fluctuations. That's... Terrell stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. That's impossible. Willie was living on Social Security. She didn't have that kind of money. Mrs. Cross was an exceptionally savvy investor, Gerald said calmly, and she had excellent financial guidance. Terrell turned on me, his face twisted with rage. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I found out 3 months ago, I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Right around the time I found out you were planning to steal my inheritance and run away to Costa Rica with your mistress. His face went white, then red, then white again. I don't know what you... Simone, I said quietly. In Costa Rica, the offshore accounts, the divorce papers you were planning to send once you were settled. Should I go on? Gerald cleared his throat. Mr. Whitfield, I should inform you that we have extensive documentation of your communications with Raymond Patterson regarding plans to defraud your wife of her rightful inheritance. Text messages, recorded phone conversations, bank statements showing suspicious transfers. You recorded me? Terrell's voice rose to a shout. That's illegal. You can't... Actually, in this state, one-party consent is sufficient for recording, Gerald said. Mrs. Whitfield, as one party to the conversations that took place in her own home, had every legal right to document them. Terrell jabbed a finger at me. You vindictive... Careful, Gerald interrupted, his voice sharp. I strongly advise you not to finish that sentence. For a long moment, Terrell just stood there, breathing hard, his hands clenched into fists. I could see his mind working, trying to find an angle, a way out, something he could manipulate or control. Fine, he finally said. Fine, you got me. Congratulations, Yvonne. You and your dead mama outsmarted me. You get the house, you get the money. I hope you're happy. He started toward the door. We're not finished, Gerald said. Terrell stopped. Sit down, Mr. Whitfield. There's more we need to discuss. Something in Gerald's tone made my stomach drop. We'd planned everything so carefully, but there was something in his expression now that I didn't recognize. Terrell slowly returned to his chair. What else? Gerald pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the first. Mrs. Cross had other assets besides the house and the investment portfolio, including a life insurance policy for $1 million. My head snapped toward him. Mama had life insurance? She'd never mentioned... The policy was taken out 30 years ago, Gerald continued. Small monthly premiums, but it built up substantial value. Mrs. Cross named her daughter Yvonne as the primary beneficiary when the policy was first established. Terrell's expression shifted slightly. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out if there was any way he could claim part of that money. However, Gerald said, and his tone made my blood run cold. Last year, the beneficiary was changed. The room tilted. What? I whispered. Gerald's eyes met mine, and there was genuine regret in them. I'm sorry, Yvonne. Your mother came to my office last November, almost exactly a year ago. She said she needed to update her life insurance policy. She changed the primary beneficiary to Terrell Whitfield. The air left my lungs. No, Mama wouldn't. She knew what kind of man he was. She wouldn't give him anything, unless... That's impossible, I said. She would never... Your signature is on the change form, Gerald said gently. Witnessed and notarized. Terrell had gone very still, very quiet. I looked at him and saw something flicker across his face. Not surprise, recognition. The refinance papers, I breathed. Last year. You had me sign a stack of papers for the refinance. You said it was just paperwork, that I didn't need to read it all. His silence was answer enough. You forged her signature, Gerald said, his voice hard. Had your wife signed documents she didn't read? Buried the insurance beneficiary change in the middle of mortgage paperwork. Prove it, Terrell said flatly. Oh, we can. Gerald opened the folder and pulled out a document. The notary who witnessed your signature? She kept copies of everything, including the fact that Mrs. Whitfield signed 37 pages that day, most of which had nothing to do with any mortgage refinance. When we contacted her and explained the situation, she was very cooperative. Terrell's jaw worked. What do you want? Here's what's going to happen, Gerald said. You're going to sign paperwork today, right now, relinquishing any claim to that life insurance policy. You're going to sign a post-nuptial agreement that clearly separates all of Mrs. Whitfield's inherited assets from any marital property. And you're going to agree to a very specific divorce settlement. And if I don't, then we go to the police with evidence of fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. We also go to the IRS with information about your offshore accounts and unreported income. Gerald leaned forward. How many years do you think you'd get, Mr. Whitfield? 5? 10? And that's assuming the judge is feeling generous. I watched my husband's face cycle through emotions: rage, fear, calculation. Finally, he slumped back in his chair. What are the terms? Gerald slid a document across the desk. You get nothing. Mrs. Whitfield keeps the house, the investment portfolio, and the life insurance. You walk away with whatever marital assets you came into the marriage with, which according to our research was approximately $15,000 in a checking account and a 1993 Honda Accord. That's not... You also agree never to contact Mrs. Whitfield again except through attorneys. You vacate the marital home within 30 days. You drop any claim to her pension, her Social Security, anything else. Terrell looked at me, and for the first time in 32 years, I saw real fear in his eyes. Yvonne, baby, we can work this out. We don't need lawyers. We can... Sign the papers, I said quietly. After everything I've done for you, sign the papers. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, with shaking hands, he picked up the pen Gerald offered him. I should have felt triumphant, should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Terrell was halfway through the stack of documents when Gerald's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Excuse me, he said, standing. I need to take this call. It's urgent. He stepped out of the office, leaving me alone with Terrell and the sound of pen scratching against paper. You're going to regret this, Terrell said without looking up. You think you're so smart. You think you won. But you have no idea what you've done. What I've done? You were planning to abandon me with nothing. I was planning to give us both a fresh start, he hissed. But now you've made an enemy, Yvonne, and you're going to wish you'd just let me go quietly. Before I could respond, Gerald came back into the office. His face was pale. Yvonne, he said carefully, I need to speak with you, in private. Something in his voice made my heart race. What's wrong? Please, just come with me. I followed him into a small conference room down the hall. He closed the door behind us and turned to face me, his expression grave. That was Portia Chen, he said. Your mother's financial advisor. Okay. There's been a problem with the investment account. The floor dropped out from under me. What kind of problem? Gerald took a deep breath. The account has been frozen by the SEC. They're investigating possible fraud. Fraud? But Portia... It's not Portia they're investigating, Gerald said quietly. It's the company she used for most of your mother's investments. They collapsed this morning. Billions of dollars missing. It's all over the financial news. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The $5 million may not exist anymore, Gerald finished. Portia is trying to get more information, but right now it looks like your mother's portfolio was heavily invested in this company. If the money is really gone... The room spun. No, This couldn't be happening. Not after everything. Not after Mama had planned so carefully. Terrell, I gasped. He doesn't know yet. If he finds out the money's gone before he signs, he'll walk away, Gerald said grimly. And we'll have no leverage. No way to force him to give up his claim to the life insurance or the house. We stared at each other, the weight of it crushing down on us. From down the hall, I heard Terrell's voice. Hey, where'd everybody go? I'm done signing here. Gerald and I exchanged a look of pure panic. Everything, every carefully laid plan, every protection Mama had put in place, was falling apart. And Terrell was about to find out he'd won after all. Don't panic, Gerald whispered, his hand on my arm. Let me handle this. Go back in there and act normal. Keep him calm while I make some calls. Normal? I hissed. Gerald, if that money's gone, just trust me, please. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Mama hadn't survived 82 years by being careless. She wouldn't have put everything in one basket. She couldn't have. I walked back into Gerald's office on shaking legs. Terrell had finished signing and was leaning back in his chair, looking oddly calm for a man who'd just lost everything. Where'd your lawyer go? He asked. Had to run off and celebrate screwing me over? He had an urgent call, I said, sitting down carefully. My hands were trembling, so I clasped them in my lap. About a client matter. Terrell studied me with those sharp eyes that had fooled me for 32 years. You look pale, Yvonne. Something wrong? My mother just died, I said flatly. Of course something's wrong. He had the decency to look away. Gerald returned 5 minutes later, his phone pressed to his ear. Yes, I understand. Thank you, Portia. I'll tell her. He ended the call and sat down behind his desk, his expression unreadable. Everything all right? Terrell asked, his tone too casual. Fine, Gerald said smoothly. Just confirming some final details. He gathered the papers Terrell had signed and placed them in a folder. Mr. Whitfield, you're free to go. These documents will be filed today. You have 30 days to vacate the marital home. Terrell stood slowly, his eyes moving between Gerald and me. That's it? I just walk away? Unless you'd prefer we pursue criminal charges, Gerald said mildly. For a moment, I thought Terrell might argue, but then he just shook his head, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back at me one last time. Goodbye, Yvonne, he said quietly. I hope that house and all that money keep you warm at night. Then he was gone. The silence he left behind was enormous. Gerald, I whispered. The money. He held up a hand. Wait. We sat there for a full minute, listening. Then Gerald got up, walked to the door, opened it, and looked down the hallway. Apparently satisfied, he closed the door again and returned to his desk. He's gone, Gerald said. Aaliyah confirmed he left the building. What did Portia say? Gerald's serious expression finally cracked into a small smile. Your mother was a brilliant woman, Yvonne. Did she ever tell you about her father? I blinked at the change of subject. Grandpa Joe? He worked at the steel mill. He also survived the Great Depression, Gerald said. He taught your mother a very important lesson. Never put all your eggs in one basket. My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? The investment company that collapsed? Portia had exactly 8% of your mother's portfolio invested with them, about $400,000. 8%? Relief flooded through me so fast I felt dizzy. But you said... I said the account was heavily invested with that company. Technically true, $400,000 is heavy. I just didn't specify that it was only a fraction of the total. Gerald leaned forward. The rest, $4.8 million, is spread across 17 different investment vehicles: treasury bonds, blue-chip stocks, real estate investment trusts, international funds. Portia built a fortress, not a house of cards. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Tears streamed down my face, but I was laughing so hard I could barely breathe. You lied to him, I gasped. You let him think he'd won. I ensured he signed the documents before any information reached him that might have changed his mind, Gerald corrected primly, but he was smiling. Portia and I coordinated the timing. She called me the moment the news broke about the company collapse. We knew Terrell would hear about it soon. It's all over the news. If he'd known before signing that the collapse only affected a small portion of the portfolio, he might have tried to wait it out, see if he could find another angle. But now the papers are signed. Now the papers are signed, witnessed, and legally binding. He gave up all claims to your inherited assets, including the life insurance policy. In exchange, we agreed not to pursue criminal charges. Gerald's smile faded slightly. Although, between you and me, I wish we could have. The man deserves jail time. What about the $400,000 we lost? Portia thinks we can recover about 60% through the bankruptcy proceedings, maybe more. Either way, you still have more than enough to pay off the mortgage, maintain the house, and live comfortably. The weight that had been crushing my chest for 3 months finally lifted. I could breathe again. "Thank you," I whispered. "Gerald, I don't know how to—" "Your mother was a good woman," he said gently. "She deserved better than what that man planned for her memory, and you deserve better than what he planned for you." I left Gerald's office an hour later with copies of all the documents and a new understanding of just how much my mother had loved me. She'd spent 5 years building a safety net so strong that even a financial crisis couldn't destroy it. But my relief was short-lived. When I got home that afternoon, Terrell's car was in the driveway. I felt a spike of fear. He was supposed to leave, to stay away, but then I saw Reverend Calvin Oates's distinctive black Cadillac parked on the street, and my friend Shanice's silver minivan behind it. I walked into my house to find Terrell throwing clothes into suitcases, while Reverend Oates stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, watching him like a hawk. Shanice was in the living room with 2 other women from the church, Deirdre and Tamika, apparently supervising. "There she is," Reverend Oates said when he saw me. "Sister Yvonne. We thought we'd come by and make sure your husband understood the terms of your agreement." "You called the church on me?" Terrell demanded, shoving a stack of shirts into a bag. "Really, Yvonne? You had to bring them into this?" "I called them," Reverend Oates said calmly. "When I heard what you'd been planning, plotting against Sister Vivian even as she lay dying, I decided you needed some encouragement to do the right thing. We're here to help you pack, and to make sure you don't take anything that doesn't belong to you." "This is my house, too." "Not anymore," Shanice called from the living room. "We got the papers right here that say otherwise." I watched Terrell grab his things with jerky, angry movements, and felt nothing. No sadness, no regret. Just a distant sense of something ending that should have ended years ago. "You know what the worst part is?" Terrell said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the bedroom. "I actually loved you once. When we first met. Did you know that?" "I know," I said quietly. "I loved you too." "So what happened?" I thought about all the little moments over 32 years, the times he'd dismissed my opinions, the way he'd controlled our finances, how he'd slowly, methodically isolated me from my friends, made me dependent on him, convinced me I couldn't make it without him. "You happened," I said, "the real you, the one you kept hidden until you thought I was too trapped to leave." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he zipped up the last bag and walked past me without another word. Reverend Oates followed him out, making sure he actually left. The sound of Terrell's car starting, then driving away, felt like a door closing on a chapter of my life. "You okay, honey?" Shanice asked, appearing at my side. "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it was true. "Yeah, I think I am." The next few weeks passed in a blur. Terrell's lawyer tried to contest the post-nuptial agreement, claiming his client had signed under duress. Gerald shut that down with the recordings and text messages showing Terrell's intent to defraud. The lawyer withdrew the challenge within 48 hours. The divorce was finalized in record time. Terrell got his $15,000 and his old car. I got everything else, including my freedom. But the real revelation came when I finally went through all of Mama's papers with Portia Chen. We met at Mama's house, my house now, on a cold December morning. Portia was a small woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. "Your mother was one of my favorite clients," Portia said as we sat in Mama's kitchen with tea and her financial records spread across the table. Not because of the money, though watching that portfolio grow was certainly satisfying, but because she understood something most people don't. What's that? That wealth isn't about having money, it's about having choices. Portia pulled out a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. She kept this, asked me to give it to you after she passed. My hands shook as I opened it. Mama's handwriting filled the pages, neat, precise, the same handwriting that had signed my permission slips and written me encouragement notes in my school lunches. The journal entries went back 5 years, to when Mama had first taken out the mortgage. May 15th, 2020. Met with Portia today. Took the plunge and invested the money. Terrell thinks I'm foolish, that I'm drowning in debt. Good. Let him think that. Let him show his true colors. Because if he's the man Yvonne thinks he is, he'll support her no matter what. But if he's the man I suspect he is, well, at least we'll know. I flipped forward, tears blurring my vision. August 3rd, 2021. Portfolio hit $1.5 million today. Portia says we're ahead of schedule. Good. Yvonne's going to need this. I see how Terrell looks at her sometimes, like she's something he owns instead of someone he loves. I see how small she's become, how she asks his permission before making decisions. This isn't the daughter I raised. This money, it's not about houses or investments. It's about giving her the power to be herself again. December 12th, 2023. Met with Gerald Thornton about the trust. Everything is set up. If something happens to me, Yvonne will be protected. She'll have choices. She can leave Terrell if she wants. She can stay if she chooses. But either way, she won't be trapped by money. No daughter of Vivian Cross will be trapped by anything. October 30th, 2025. I'm getting tired. The doctor says my heart is giving out. But I'm not afraid. I've done what I needed to do. I've built something that will outlast me. Something that will keep my baby girl safe. If you're reading this, Yvonne, it means I'm gone. Don't you cry too much for me. I lived a good life. Loved a good man. Raised a brilliant daughter. And I got to spend my last years making sure you'd be okay. Whatever happened after I passed, whatever Terrell tried to do, I pray you found this journal and you know, you were always strong enough. You were always smart enough. You were always enough. I just wanted to make sure you had the resources to remember that. I couldn't read anymore through my tears. Portia quietly handed me a tissue. She loved you very much, Portia said softly. I know, I whispered. I just wish I'd told her more often. She knew. We spent the rest of that morning going over finances. With the mortgage paid off and the remaining portfolio generating income, I'd never have to worry about money again. I could work if I wanted to. Or not. I could travel, take classes, volunteer, whatever I chose. For the first time in decades, my life was my own. That evening, I walked through Mama's house, my house, with new eyes. The parlor where I'd taken my first steps. The kitchen where I'd learned to cook. The bedroom where Mama had passed peacefully in her sleep. I found myself on the front porch as the sun set, watching the neighborhood come alive with evening activity. Kids playing basketball in the street, neighbors calling greetings to each other, the smell of someone's dinner drifting on the cold air. This was home. This had always been home. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard about Terrell. Good riddance. You deserve better. Shanice's cousin, Deshawn. I smiled. I barely remembered Deshawn, Shanice's cousin who'd moved back to town last year. But apparently word was spreading. Another text came through. This one from Reverend Oates. Bible study tomorrow night at the church. We'd love to see you there if you're feeling up to it. Then one from Gerald. Final paperwork is ready for your signature. Come by the office this week. Also, my mother wants your peach cobbler recipe. She claims it's better than hers. And one from Portia. Quarterly statement shows the portfolio recovered nicely. Your mother would be pleased. Lunch next week? I sat on the porch swing Grandpa Joe had built 70 years ago and realized something. I wasn't alone. I'd thought Terrell leaving would mean isolation, loneliness. But Mama had built more than just a financial safety net. She'd made sure I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared. The church community that had always been there. The lawyer who'd fought for me. The financial advisor who'd protected Mama's legacy. The friends who'd stood by me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Local man arrested for insurance fraud. Raymond Patterson, 58, taken into custody following investigation into multiple fraudulent claims. I read the article with growing satisfaction. Apparently Ray, Terrell's accomplice, had been running several scams. And when the authorities started digging, they'd found all kinds of interesting connections, including communications with Terrell about setting up offshore accounts. The article mentioned that other suspects were being investigated. I sent the link to Gerald with a single question mark. His response came immediately. I may have shared some information with the appropriate authorities, purely in the interest of justice. Of course. I laughed out loud, the sound echoing across the porch. The next few months transformed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. I joined the church choir, something I'd always wanted to do but Terrell had discouraged. You can't carry a tune, baby. Better leave the singing to people who know what they're doing. Turned out my alto wasn't half bad. I started volunteering at the community center, teaching financial literacy to young women. Portia helped me develop the curriculum. We called it Building Your Safety Net, in honor of Mama. I took a painting class at the local college. Discovered I loved abstract art, the freedom of throwing color on canvas without worrying about making it perfect. And slowly, carefully, I let myself make friends again. Real friends. Not the surface-level acquaintances Terrell had allowed, but women who knew my story and liked me anyway. Deshawn, Shanice's cousin, asked me to dinner 3 months after Terrell left. I said no. Too soon. But he smiled and said, "That's cool. Maybe when you're ready." I liked that. The idea that there was no rush, no pressure, just possibility. 6 months after Mama's death, the church held a special service in her honor. They'd renamed the fellowship hall the Vivian Cross Community Center. I sat in the front pew, surrounded by people who'd loved her, and listened to story after story about how Mama had touched lives. She gave my daughter a scholarship when we couldn't afford college, one woman said. She sat with my son in the hospital every day for 2 weeks when he was sick, said another. She taught me that being strong doesn't mean never asking for help. It means knowing when to lean on your community. I'd known Mama was special, but hearing everyone else confirm it, seeing the legacy she'd left beyond just money and property, that was when I truly understood what she'd been trying to teach me all along. Wealth wasn't about dollars in a bank account. It was about being rich in love, in community, in purpose. The money was just a tool. The real inheritance was the lesson. That I was strong enough to stand on my own, wise enough to ask for help when I needed it, and worthy of a life built on my own terms. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Gerald called with the news just as I was planting rose bushes in my front garden. "It's done," he said. "You're officially free." Free. Such a simple word. Such an enormous concept. That evening, I sat on the front porch with a glass of sweet tea and watched the sun set. The house was quiet, just me and the sound of the neighborhood settling in for the night. My phone buzzed, a text from Terrell's number, even though he wasn't supposed to contact me. "You won. Happy now?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I blocked the number and deleted the text. He still didn't get it. This was never about winning or losing. It was about reclaiming my life, about honoring Mama's sacrifice, about becoming the woman I was always meant to be. I pulled out my own phone and opened a new document. For months, people had been telling me I should write down my story. "Other women need to hear this," Shanice kept saying. "They need to know they can survive. They can thrive." Maybe she was right. I started typing. My husband Terrell's laugh echoed through the lawyer's office like a slap across my face. 1 year after Mama's death, I hosted Thanksgiving at the house on Oakwood Avenue. The dining room table was extended to its full 12 feet, and every chair was filled. Shanice and her family. Deshawn, who'd become a good friend, and maybe, possibly, something more. Reverend Oates and his wife, Gerald and Portia and their spouses, Deirdre and Tamika from the church. We held hands around the table as Reverend Oates said grace. "Lord, we thank you for this food, for this fellowship, and for the woman who brought us all together. Sister Vivian may be gone from this earth, but her spirit lives on in this house, in this community, and in her daughter who continues her legacy of love and strength. Amen." "Amen," everyone echoed. As we passed dishes and filled plates, laughter and conversation flowing, I looked around at these faces, this chosen family, and felt Mama's presence as clearly as if she were sitting right beside me. She'd given me money, yes, security, options. But more than that, she'd given me something I'd lost somewhere along the way with Terrell. She'd given me back myself. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was washing the last of the dishes, I noticed something on the windowsill above the sink. A small envelope with my name written in Mama's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single card with a photo of Mama and me from years ago, standing on this very porch. On the back, in her neat script, "My darling girl. If you're reading this, you made it through. I knew you would. You're stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for. This house, this money, they're just things. What matters is what you do with them. Build a life that makes you happy. Love people who deserve your love. Stand up for what's right. And never, ever let anyone make you feel small again. You are Vivian Cross's daughter. You are worthy of every good thing this world has to offer. All my love, always. Mama." I held the card to my chest and cried. Not sad tears this time, grateful ones. "Thank you, Mama," I whispered, "for everything." Outside, the wind chimed through the porch bells, and if I didn't know better, I'd swear I heard Mama's laugh mixed in with it, warm and full of love, and telling me, as she always had, that everything was going to be just fine. Because it was. Better than fine. I was free. I was whole. I was home, and that was worth more than all the money in the world. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.